week and I ain't trying to talk about, hey, it's 555. Let me use my phone and screenshot that. My rule is I have to look right when it's that number in order for me to screenshot it. Technically it's cheating because I was noticing it earlier 5 minutes ago, but I'm high and I was distracted talking to you when I did that, so it counts. It was organic. I just was looking at a random Insta post on my algorithm feed because I like to do that. Because I on my Insta specifically, not Facebook. Facebook, I like stuff from people I actually know and stuff that I find funny, and that's it. Nothing else. In fact, I'm rarely on Facebook. But Insta, all of the things that inflame me passionately, like in terms of like the creative and the intellectual, so like history, ancient civilizations, artifacts, metaphysics, physics, spirituality, all that type of stuff. I like those only, like those categories of things that feel enriching to me. So now the algorithm only feeds those things. So I learned about all kinds of fun stuff, and I was just looking at a random post. It was a random page about some kind of metaphysical, spiritual stuff, and it was like, oh yeah, if you see 1111, if you see things like that, that means your spirit guide, your higher consciousness, your quote-unquote guardian angel is with you in that moment, trying to direct you to like what is your ultimate fate. Yeah, I've been learning about all kinds of crazy stuff, like so I've always been very spiritual, but also very like matter of fact, what one might call patriarchal. And when you bridge the concept of infinity, the cosmos, the universe, God, Yahweh, whatever you want to call it, and into the patriarchal sciences, that is called metaphysics. And it's kind of insane how enlightening it's been just basically learning about metaphysics, like how the rest of it unfolds. Like I've been learning some really powerful things about life, and even like how, so like I knew going into this is what sparks it for everybody. I knew that we don't know anything, like this whole picture, technology, the innovation of that which we call civilization, modern comforts, the internet, all of it's part of that package. None of it's real. This isn't real life. You have to understand that this is a piece of technology that we are dependent on now because we don't know what it's like to be in the real world, Mother Nature, and once you bridge that and you start your journey forward, I am resolute that you will find that not only have we been wrong about things for so long, but we just don't know anything about anything. In fact, there are so many things that they're putting forward with hard physiological, like artifact evidence about alternate history, ancient histories that have been incorrectly educated to the public on. But they refuse to because they have a narrative that they went forward with. And society, civilization, though it's such a beautiful thing because it's so big, like a corporation, it's a battleship basically at that point. It turns slowly. So whenever they find new information, they can't just be like, all right, this is the new information. They think like, oh no, that's too chaotic. People are going to lose their fucking minds. Everything's going to be changing too quick for them. So they do it a little bit at a time. Tiny, little, meticulous drip. But now they're so far ahead of us that they have all this power because we don't have knowledge of these things even existing. And they're all fighting now as a global syndicate over who gets what. And the larger things come because they realize now that they're so big, they're so advanced, they all have so many big weapons that they could all just annihilate each other. So they've all quietly come together and they're like, all right, how are we going to slice up this pie? And they're all making a move towards global government, which is what conspiracy theorists put their tinfoil hats on about. But generally speaking, if you have to think about a quote-unquote utopian society where we achieve everything and we're like a beautiful united humanity, eventually we have to fall under one entity. The only problem is if you look at every major world government, every leading world power, they have so many problems, and they are all so power hungry. So them conglomerizing doesn't bode well for a lot of us, because let's be honest, they've rigged the game. I've worked in banking, I've worked in service, I've worked in food, I've worked in retail, I've worked in now tech. I've technical supported, I've replaced it, I've sold it to you, I have troubleshooted it, I have been the provider with the phone company that does the technical servicing, in the sense of like the tower end, not necessarily the phone end of troubleshooting, but like the service troubleshooting aspect. You know, I've been in all these industries, and then you learn about other fringe things. Like I learned about like finance and a lot of stuff while I was in banking. Long story short, the Great American Experiment has succeeded, but it failed the people. It succeeded because it was supposed to do something very specific, but it wasn't supposed to do it for the general American people. It was supposed to do it for the people who were steering the ship. So they have rigged the game, basically, to make it near impossible for the regular man to do the most basic things that are the next step, quote unquote, in this lifetime. And now they're trying to cement that globally. So it's problematic. Let's hope for the future. Let's love for the future. But the future has been one of the most beautiful, scary times to ever be alive. But yeah, that's really at the heart of like what I'm reading about every day. But also, even though I'm like such a nerd and so quote unquote patriarchal, if you asked me like what I believed and we weren't streaming, I would tell you some straight up crazy shit. Like I might as well be a tinfoil hat wearer, honestly. But the problem is, if you rewind far back enough, the quote unquote stereotype conspiracy theorist with the tinfoil hat, what they were saying today, 2021, Freedom of Information Act that started in like 2010, 2015-esque, they've been able to get declassified documents for the public that basically, you pick a conspiracy theory, and there is documents being declassified and already declassified that show validity to almost every single one of those major conspiracy theories. Like my favorite right now, the hot button one, is MK Ultra. Like, bro, the government does not want to like experiment with mind control and thought suggestion and thought erasure, thought replacement. Like, they won't just do random blind experiments on the general populace, especially without their consent. Look it up. It's everywhere. Everywhere. Well, it's not even about getting them quote unquote on their side. They don't want the general humans of this world to know what the sides even are. They want you to think about BLM versus Antifa. They want you to think about Republicans versus Democrats. They want you to think about Asian hate. They want you to worry and be scared to drop dead of the coronavirus. Like, they don't actually care. Like, they present it in a way that they care, but if you look at what they give you, they only give you machinations that make you fearful, machinations of fear. They don't uplift you. They don't tell you, well, looks like 97% of the fatal cases with the coronavirus, they had a distinct deficiency in vitamin C and D. 97% of fatal deaths for coronavirus. And they don't say that UV does in fact instantly kill the virus, as we understand it right now. So if you're in broad sunlight and you're 6 feet apart, you're fucking fine. Because the virus is dying from the UV light, and UV light penetrates even if the sun isn't out. But if you want to be like safe about it, then obviously if the sun's out directly, you're getting UV light and it's instantly killing the virus. They don't tell you that you have to work out a certain amount of time, that you have to have a mindset that is relaxed, because anxiety, stress, fear, all of these things, any medical professional can tell you exactly. It's so fucking insane. They're not giving us basic guidance. You can ask any doctor about these kind of things and they will give you constructive support. So why is it that none of the people on this planet seem to be getting direction in a way that actually is loving the human and not inducing fear? Something to think about. These are real issues. Don't get me wrong though. Like I don't want to belittle any of these issues. Like they're real issues. But my problem is like you have to hold people accountable. And not only are we not doing that, we're just trying to cancel everybody, which is part of what they want us to do. You know, we're ignoring everything they're doing. Like if you look at I think we're both American, I'm pretty sure. If you look at our elected officials in the Senate and in Congress, they make like $1 million a year, and then like they have like taxpayer funded contributions to their pensions that they get after the fact, and they make like yearly after at least like 500 and some just from this pension after they leave office. And these guys will show up and they're like, oh, you guys haven't had any money to pay your bills in 3 months? Oh, I guess we'll give you $1,400. That should pay rent. Go pay rent with $1,400. You'll be perfectly fine. Don't even worry about it. Meanwhile, they've only had that one meeting, but in that 3 months, they've made like 100,000 or some shit. And these guys are delaying. They're punting the ball. They're not signing legislation, not putting bills out. You know, it's a battleship. It's slow. So when you take a machine that is already inherently slow and inefficient, and then you put elected officials that sit around and do nothing when emergencies are happening, how do you expect anything to get better? It doesn't. That's the real truth. It doesn't. How do you think these stimulus packages are coming through so quick? People are like, well, they're showing now. They're proving that if it was an issue of money, that they could just make it work. No, they're making a deal with the fucking boogeyman because they themselves, the elected officials, they're not part of the people who built this system. They don't, like, they benefit from it, yeah, but their role has been catered so that all they have to do is just sit there, look good, keep their mouth shut, and every once in a while make some good changes, which is kind of like what we got with Derek Chauvin a little bit. But even then, it's such a heart-wrenching and demoralizing event in history because Derek Chauvin, it's not a debate of whether or not he was guilty of murder and manslaughter, because if you haven't paid attention to the video, people are telling him to stop and a man died. That's instantly manslaughter. You know, you can't really debate that kind of thing. But anyways, he felt so secure. It wasn't that he was worried about this man dying, it's that he wasn't worried about consequences in that moment. He was on autopilot. This was something that was an extension of his self, in his conscious mind, his logical mind. He felt like he was quote-unquote supported in this ecosystem. And that is really what should be troubling, because now he's a quote-unquote martyr in his eyes, and in a way he's right, because all he did was essentially do exactly what he was taught to do in the ecosystem of coworkers he was taught to do it in his environment that he grew up in. And now suddenly, because society has finally changed, he's been blindsided and forced to confront himself. But, you know, if you're that wrapped up in such a dangerous job, imagine that fear. Think about what cops have been going through, you know, and this hasn't been a instant rise to boil these waters between the American populace and police. It's been a slow boil that turned over one day, starting with, you know, Floyd. But it's just like, those cops, they deal with some, like, I literally just watched a video of a cop who was working in conjunction with federal officers in New Mexico. They told him, hey, this guy is a part of a case. It would be really helpful if you could stop this vehicle and confirm who he is, and we're going to arrest him and serve a warrant. So he walks up, checks the vehicle. He's talking to the dude. The dude's like acting sketch and buggy as fuck. Turns out the dude was in the middle of making a drug deal. And this officer didn't know anything about what was going on. So he was being all calm, being a totally nice gentleman about everything. He's just like, I gotta confirm you. Get out of the car, come over here because you don't have your driver's license. I'm just gonna run you. I'll see your photo. It's fine. He's on the opposite side of the vehicle because he pulled him over on the highway. So he's on the passenger side door and the windows rolled down. And the guy's getting out and he sees the guy's hilt of his gun. He thinks it's a pistol, but it's actually like a compact AR in this guy's waistband. And he's like, is that a gun? He's like, oh, can I take that from you just for my safety? That was his last words. Because what happened was when he started walking back to the car with that dude, he pulled it out. It was a big ass rifle. He can't see shit. He never saw it. And he cocks that shit back and he raises it over the tailgate. Pop, pop. I think the first shot was in his neck. And then they cut the camera because the officer goes down. The guy runs across the street on the other side of the highway where the cars are facing away. He's on the other side of the truck. The officer's laying there on the ground. Pop, 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 pop. Gets in his truck, speeds off. Imagine that is your job, that could happen at any stop. If you're a normal, sane human, you would be scared. The problem with that is it's your job to manage that fear, keep it in check, make the right decision. And it's even then, quote unquote, what is right isn't easy. Like, that guy played it by the book. It was a very sane human, but now he's in the ground. He's a dead officer. He had 2 kids and 1 on the way. You know? And the system failed him because he felt like he had to act a certain way and to not induce fear in other people, and then induce fear in himself, and thus cause an escalated situation that could cause somebody to get hurt. So he played it, quote unquote, right. But then these federal officers didn't properly equip him. So he walked into the lion's den totally unprepared to escalate. So when it came time to escalate, he died. You know, they could have helped him with just that little bit. So it's like these officers are starting to not feel supported by their own administration now, because the administration is trying to turn the battleship, so to speak. And then the public, the public are not pro-cop right now. Generally speaking, that's a generalization. Exactly, like Derek Chauvin was in that moment, one of those people. But the problem is, like, it's not necessarily that they think they have all the power. They think that they are working for a specific type of system that is looking out for them. That is the problem, because they don't feel like they're empowered. That's why they get so elevated. That's why they get so upset. That's why they're so scared. That's why, like, and then it's a perpetuating cycle. They carry this stuff with them. They come home with it, and they're talking to their families, and they're like, they're trained to be in survival mode, because any second it can pop off. And then they come home and they're like, nothing's changed. I'm just not wearing my badge and my uniform anymore. People are still the people I see when I go out there. I gotta protect mine. So then, without even realizing it, they've turned that switch back on in the house. And then that's when bad officers, in my opinion, are born. From that point forward, the decisions they choose to make, because they never uncheck that fear, that tension, that stress. They're always carrying it with them. And so many cops are like that. My dad wasn't even an actual regular officer. He was a correctional officer, but he worked death row for years. Hard motherfucker. He and I, long story short, we got problems, because he was one of those people. You know, he was around some of the most disgusting members of society and humanity, and he understood what it took to make those people be accountable. The attitudes sometimes you have to adopt to be a survivor around a predator. But you have to check that. You have to figure out a conducive way to be a member of society when you are not that person. And that's part of one of the many issues that we have. Long story short, there is a mental health epidemic in this country. And people are benefiting from it instead of helping other humans out, which is the loving thing to do. Like, somebody struggling, love them, appreciate them, meet them where they're at. They need improvement. They need to get better, so they're not going to start making good decisions as soon as you step in and try to help. They need time. They need somebody to be like, I see you. Let me give you peace. Let's work on this together. We're here for each other.